Welcome back to Fantasy Football Predictive Analytics Podcast with Rhys Tiller in the Honorable Lord Reeves, Rich Hribar. How are you, Rich?
Gentlemen, what is going on? I don't know if I'm a third-time guest. Are there any other three-time guests?
Maybe.
Yes, maybe.
Oh, I thought it was special. Yeah.
You can be we'll say this. We'll let you be the first four-timer.
I'll take it. I wasn't sure. I thought maybe I was in an exclusive club right now.
You are. And, we've had some great guests on just the last few weeks. Last week was Nick Whalen. Week before was Matthew Berry. And I forgot who the week before that was. And so, anyway, we always enjoy talking football. Here we are running up to the Super Bowl. What a great day. What a great week. So much excitement. You think the game's going to live up to high hopes, Rich?
I think so. It looks great on paper. Rhys is growing up in a great era of Super Bowls. When I was his age, the Super Bowls were all terrible. The NFC just whipped on the AFC for a decade straight when I was younger. You know your Super Bowl history, so that era. Every Super Bowl is a blowout. We've been littered with a bunch of great games outside of maybe that Rams-Patriots game a couple years ago, which at least was close but was not entertaining by a wide margin. We've had some really great Super Bowls recently. I think that this one sets up to be well. Listen, Brady, 2 decades of Tom Brady. Him and Peyton were like the arch rivals, and Peyton now is eligible to go into the Hall of Fame, and Brady's still playing in Super Bowls. It's pretty crazy.
Oh, yeah.
So you mentioned this game living up to the hype. Who do you think wins and why?
I definitely I'm on the Chiefs side, but I definitely believe the Bucs are a live dog. If you are a Bucs supporter. The game was wasn't as close as it was in week 12. It was 27-24. Wasn't that close though, as the scoreboard says. Chiefs are up 17-0 at the end of the first quarter. They were up 20-7 at the half. They were up 27-10 going into the fourth quarter. You get a backdoor cover from the Bucs, but a lot went wrong in that game for the Bucs too. They had 14 plays for 39 yards in the first quarter of that game. They had 3 3-and-outs. Didn't really, weather that initial storm. And when you're chasing points against Patrick Mahomes, it's a big uphill battle, and that's what happened in that game. But when you look at this game from what happened in week 12, both those teams combined for 53 points, but they had 3 turnovers in the opposition side of the field. Both teams averaged over 7.5 yards per play. It was the only game this season in which both teams averaged over 7.5 yards per play. The Chiefs had 10 penalties, their second most in a game this season. So even with the 53 combined points, there was a lot left on the field that game, and potential for that game to be even more high scoring. As much credit as we give the Chiefs, and they've flipped that switch again this postseason, they've only punted once in 2 postseason games. The Bucs actually are the higher scoring team. They've scored 30 or more points in 6 straight games. That's a franchise record. They've scored 24 or more points in 10 straight games. And when you're playing against Patrick Mahomes, a lot of teams, you want to get caught up in the, limit possessions. Let's run the ball, play keep away. That has not worked. The 9 games that Patrick Mahomes has lost, or the Chiefs have lost at Patrick Mahomes under center. I don't want to say Patrick Mahomes has lost these games. Opponents have had to average 36.2 points. They've needed 29 or more points to win 6 of those games. In all the 9 losses that they've had with Patrick Mahomes under center, the Chiefs have scored fewer than 24 points in just 1 of those games. So that old notion of playing keep away has not really worked. You've got to come in and just Rocky Balboa, Apollo Creed, Ivan Drago, you got to just come in and just trade blows with the Chiefs. Hope you have the ball last in a lot of those scenarios. But you've just got to come in and saying, we need 30 points on the board. So hopefully if the Bucs come out with that mindset, we'll have a lot of fireworks in that game.
So you think the Bucs are going to run on first down like they did against Green Bay?
Yeah, they will, because that's what they do. No team passes more in the NFL on second down than the Bucs, typically because they get 3 yards on a first down play. But teams can't help themselves. They get against the Chiefs and they come out and they try to establish a run. That's what everyone does against the Chiefs, and it hasn't worked. The Colts pulled it off once. a couple years ago. And Tyreek Hill didn't play in that game. Mahomes hurt his ankle. A lot went into that game. I think the Colts had like a 9-minute drive at one point in that game. I mean, it really hasn't worked outside of that one instance. So, I mean, I would hope that Bruce Arians and the Bucs come out and want to play aggressive and try to score points. There are a lot of narratives in this game. I mean, obviously, Steve Spagnuolo is no stranger to Tom Brady. They faced off, 5 times and Spags' teams have won 3 of those 5 games. Obviously, the 2007 Super Bowl sticks out in a lot of people's minds. But Brady's only averaged 7 yards per pass attempt in those 5 games that they've played each other. They've been able to kind of generate pressure. And the one thing with both these quarterbacks is, Mahomes is a lot better at pressure than Brady. But, Brady, if you can get to him, that's still like his bugaboo, interior pressure. If you can get there with 4, even this postseason under pressure, he's 6 of 21 passing under pressure in the playoffs. In the Chiefs defense, I feel like doesn't get enough credit for being able to turn it on too. That everyone talks about the Chiefs offense has turned it on, but this Chiefs defense in these 2 playoff games, shutting down a hot Browns offense, Baker Mayfield, 5.5 yards per pass attempt. And then Josh Allen and the Bills, who were legitimately the hottest offense in the NFL coming into that game, and, holding Josh Allen to 6.5 yards per pass attempt. And Josh Allen never looked comfortable at any point in the AFC Championship game.
But you mentioned interior pressure, and who's the best Chiefs defender? Chris Jones, their defensive tackle. And he showed in last game's Super Bowl that he can flip the switch in the fourth quarter and almost start to take over. And everybody talks about the big Tyreek Hill pass in the fourth quarter. But Chris Jones does not get enough credit for effectively making the 49ers basically ineffective.
Yeah, he had 2 great plays in a row. I mean, those big hawk mollies, man, they don't get enough love.
No. How about, but also, if we're giving a D-line the advantage, I'm giving the Tampa Bay D-line an advantage, especially with the beat up Chiefs O-line. And getting Vita Vea back or Vita Vea, whatever, I think the Bucs could maybe put some pressure up the middle.
Yeah, I mean, you look, so the first time these teams played in Week 12, the Bucs only blitzed 9 times, 17% of the time. Against every other team, they blitzed 42% of the time. They're a heavy blitz team. No one's sending heat at Mahomes. A lot of people think that they played a lot of man in that first game because of the Tyreek possessions, but Tyreek caught 2 of those balls. One was a single high safety look, but was zone, and another one was a 2 high safety look, but the Chiefs quick snapped him, and before a safety could get back, Tyreek caught that one crosser. That was the 44-yard touchdown. But the Bucs didn't blitz at all. They got home. They got pressure on 34% of Mahomes' dropbacks. He was 7 of 15 when they got pressure and got home on him. But when they didn't get home, Mahomes was 30 of 34 passing. Wow. 89% completion rate when kept clean. You talked about just kind of some of the movement here. They didn't have Mitchell Schwartz, didn't play in that first game anyways, but losing Eric Fisher here now moves Mike Remmers from right tackle to left tackle. Andrew Wiley goes from right guard to right tackle in this game. But they allowed 20 pressures, the Chiefs offensive line, in that opening game. 11 of them came from Remmers and Wiley, who will be playing different positions in this game. So there's an opportunity. We'll see how the toe is with an extra week off of Mahomes, see how mobile he can be. He had no scramble yards against the Bills for the first time since week 9. He did have, 28 rushing yards in these teams played earlier in the year, 16 on design runs, 12 on scrambles. So we'll see, I got a feeling he'll be needing some more of that mobility than he needed against Buffalo in this game. But we'll see, how much pressure that front 4 can get for Tampa Bay, because they asked them to get home in the first meeting too. They did not blitz a lot. So we'll see if they, kind of counter and, Todd Bowles dials up any more blitzes and test maybe some of the movement, some of the pieces of the, getting kind of mixed up here on the offensive line in this game.
Guts of a burglar bringing those blitzes.
So we'll see if Levante David plays too. Obviously, that'll be a big deal.
100%. So what are some of the factors and even advantages that either team has going into this game?
Well, I mean, that's it for the Bucs. Like, they've got to get home. That's the story of the game. Can you get home with 4? Even Mahomes, as good as he gets pressure, like I said in that game, it was still a stark contrast when they got pressure and when he was kept clean, his performance in that game. 7.3 yards per attempt when they got pressure, 10.5 yards per attempt when kept clean. So they're going to have to get there. And we've seen teams, kind of just approach the Chiefs playing that too high safety look. The Bucs did it too. They played two high safeties 58% of the time. That was a 23% increase than they did against anyone else this season. And that's really what's elevated Travis Kelce into having the season he had. No player had more catches, yards, or touchdowns against two high safety looks in the NFL than Travis Kelce this season. And it wasn't just about limiting Tyreek Hill, which is what teams did. They wanted the Chiefs to sustain drives, not get beat by 2 to 4 play drives, get beat over the top. But what the Chiefs did in the middle of the season was really kind of flip the script and really get Tyreek Hill involved intermediately. If you look at the first 8 weeks of the season, Tyreek Hill's depth of target, 14.6 yards, average depth of target, only had 6.8 targets per game. Teams were playing a lot of that shell coverage. The Chiefs weren't able to really kind of use him effectively. They adjusted midway through the season. Remember Tyreek Hill's first couple of seasons, he was a guy that got the ball near the line of scrimmage. And we got to showcase his skills, not only in the return game, but, his yards after the catch ability, and, got him on handoffs, jet sweeps, and that kind of stuff early in his career. They got away from that the last couple of years. But this back half of the season, his depth of target has dropped 3 full yards. His targets have spiked almost 5 per game to 11.3 since week 9 on. And you've seen it even against the Bills. From that span on, he was second in the NFL in yards after the catch, 6.0 yak per reception after 4.5 yards after the catch prior. And you see that, like I said, against the Bills, when he's able to just get the ball in his hands and able to create. There was a couple, kind of 1.5 year gap there where we kind of forgot Tyreek Hill was that guy with the football. And the Chiefs have done a really good job of doing that the back half of the season.
But you say that he was getting the ball around the line of scrimmage, and for the past 1.5 years, he hasn't been doing that. That also might coincide with the Chiefs drafting Mecole Hardman, and so they don't have to put one of their most valuable players at risk near the line of scrimmage where there's a lot of heavier people that could do a lot more damage than, let's say, a 180-pound safety.
Yeah, I mean, Tyreek is one of those guys that you even seen it against the Bills. He even caught that one speed out and kind of even juked himself out of bounds and was upset. I mean, he was in the pocket in the AFC Championship game. And I really can't remember a duo that complement each other as greatly as Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce do. There's been some great duos in NFL history, and I'm sure, maybe your dad could, even challenge that. But just the fact that you have to respect Tyreek Hill's just, deep speed. You can't play man coverage on him. Even the Bucs they'll have Jamel Dean available this game. He wasn't available the first game, and he's obviously their fastest cornerback. He ran a 4.3 out of Auburn. But then if you play over the top and you don't want to get beat deep, and Hardman's even a guy that can beat you deep, then as I said, it's just played into this season. This Travis Kelce already was an elite, great tight end, and when you just are playing the kind of coverage that the Chiefs have seen this season, it takes a great player and elevates him into the type of season he had this year. I mean, they just, even paired with Mahomes, like these two guys complement each other so greatly. And even if you remove Mahomes, go back, 4 years ago, look at the season Alex Smith had playing with these two guys. Yes. I mean, there's just not two players that complement each other in the passing game like these two guys do.
And we have to give credit to Andy Reid, because even the way they used those two guys had great games against Buffalo. I say great, they had good games. But then they used them as decoys and used Hardman and his speed going the other way because Buffalo was loading that side. And, I give Reid and Bieniemy and that coaching staff a lot of credit for setting up those plays in optimal fashion.
Oh, yeah. I mean, listen, Andy Reid's always cooking some stuff up.
Oh, yeah.
Speaking of the coaching staff, who do you think has the better coaching staff in the Super Bowl?
I mean, I'm going to side with Andy Reid. Especially you've got the Andy Reid coming off of a bye narrative. Just gets to cook up a little bit extra. Like I mentioned Spags earlier too. I feel like Spags doesn't get enough credit in this Chiefs defense. I feel like the Chiefs defense is an underrated unit. They do not get enough love, and they've got some individual pieces on that defense that are exceptional players that can do a lot of things. You mentioned Chris Jones, earlier. Tyrann Mathieu is the ultimate chess piece on defense. He can blitz, he can play slot corner, he can play safety, he can play linebacker in the box. Ladarius Sneed has been one of the blitz heaviest defensive backs, like to close the season. So, I mean, I like the Chiefs staff on a slight edge. No disrespect to the Bucs staff at all. Obviously, their staff is very strong. Bruce Arians in his system. Even I feel like you even can count Brady as part of the staff,
Yes.
to a degree as well. But just a slight edge to the Chiefs. But I mean, this game is what it is. I mean, this game opened at 3.5. It's stuck at 3. The total hasn't moved. It's basically been 2 weeks of just staying, even with as much money's on this game. It is just frozen where it's at. It's not really heavily swung to one side.
And Bowles is a good defensive coordinator. I think we judge him harshly because he wasn't that great as the Jets head coach. Leftwich is a good offensive coordinator, and then you have Bieniemy and Reid, and I mean it's good coaching staffs. And I'm pretty jazzed for this game, Rich.
Yeah, I mean, it looks great. I feel like that from a narrative stance, the NFL couldn't have asked for really anything better. Not only do you have Brady in his 10th Super Bowl, you have the Bucs, the first home team hosting a Super Bowl, and then you have the element of Brady and Mahomes. Is he passing the torch on to the next GOAT or the next potential dynasty? I mean, if the Chiefs win the coin toss 2 years ago in overtime, they could be playing for their 3rd Super Bowl in a row. It's kind of interesting dynamic in that sense. That was against Brady, but there's just a lot to like on paper in this matchup, even for a rematch. Typically we don't always love to see a rematch. We want to see a new game, but it's hard to ask for a better matchup than this one.
We definitely agree on that. So, Rich, we know you love props. Do you have any prop bets that you love this week?
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a few prop bets I like. I think so. Starting with kind of the obvious ones. As long as we don't get any crazy rain and the weather doesn't get bonkers. I think the easiest one to look at is the Patrick Mahomes over on pass attempts. It's sitting at 40.5 right now. So Tampa Bay, we talked about their run defense, right? It's forced teams to basically just play one-dimensional all season long. The opposing offenses have thrown the ball 65.4% of the time against Tampa Bay. It's a league high rate. They face 39.2 pass attempts per game, second most in the NFL. Opposing passers hit 41 pass attempts or more in half of the games against the Bucs. And the Chiefs themselves, they don't care about running the football if they don't need to. And they showed it in this first matchup. They threw the ball on 72.2% of their snaps. It was their second highest rate in a game this season. It was 78% through 3 quarters. So they waited all the way into the 4th quarter when they had that 27-10 lead to even start really cranking up, even giving rushing attempts to their backs. So I mean, they're going to swerve into putting the ball into their best player's hands. In Patrick Mahomes. So if you like the Patrick Mahomes over, I think you can look at some of the way that kind of spills out. Now they've juiced up the Travis Kelce and Tyreek lines extremely high in this game everywhere. The receptions and the yards are extremely high for Tyreek and Kelce. The receptions are 7.5, 8.5, but you look at these ancillary pieces, Mecole Hardman, 2.5 receptions, over on those. If Mahomes is gonna be throwing the ball 41 plus times, there's gonna be a trickle down effect there. Mecole Hardman, he has at least 3 catches in 7 of his last 11 games played. He's reached 3 catches this season in half of his games. Sammy Watkins has hit his yardage props and his reception props in 60% of his games played this season. He's had more than 37. His yardage prop is 36.5. He's had 37 or more receiving yards in 72% of his career games with the Chiefs. It's so low. If you believe he's healthy, paired with Mahomes' volume, there's an opportunity to get in low there as well. Definitely like those. I feel like if you're going to be betting any Tyreek or Kelce lines, I mean, Tyreek longest reception is probably the best bet. He's had at least a 28-yard reception in 59% of his games this season, 10 of 17. He had 3 such catches when these two teams played earlier in the season. McCole Hardman also is another great reception prop. It's 14.5 right now. He has had a 15-yard reception in 2/3 of his games played this season. And he's had at least a 15-yard catch in 9 of his past 12 games. So there's some opportunity there as well. If you're looking at individual props there to kind of bet. I have some prop articles on the site that are free for everyone to read at Shuffle Analysis, kind of in the weeds there. But those are some of my favorites off top, just kind of reeling through a couple.
One of the ones that I saw that was interesting to me that I thought my gut said was on the wrong side of history on this was the Tom Brady completion percentage one. If you know which one I'm talking about, because he has not completed a high percentage of his passes of late. And I think his completion percentage is somewhere, they have it in the 60s or 70s, and he's been beneath that of late. And so it'll be interesting on that. How about Antonio Brown or Le'Veon Bell rematch? Are you going to get into any of those props?
Antonio Brown has been favorable in his, where his props lie right now. The question is, how healthy is he? And the Chiefs are, from season-long stance, they're far more vulnerable to interior wide receivers than boundary wide receivers. They're actually the best defense against boundary receivers in the NFL this season. And that held true the first matchup. It was Chris Godwin. He had 5 for 80 from the slot, 6 for 97, or 8 for 97 in the game. So I think the matchup does favor, Godwin the most of the, Kansas City pass catchers. And he's been hot as well himself. He'd be my lean. Le'Veon, I mean, we seen it last year with LaShawn McCoy. Like, the Chiefs just didn't play LaShawn McCoy at the end of the season. Do we think that Le'Veon's really even going to see any snaps in this Super Bowl? Could he potentially even be inactive? I don't think that's out of question. He doesn't play special teams. Darrell Williams has answered the bell in these playoffs. He's been reliable and done what they've asked. Clyde Edwards-Helaire's healthy. Can we really even count on Le'Veon? I don't know. I really don't have any faith in Le'Veon playing a lot of snaps and potentially even being inactive in this game like McCoy was last year if they don't have a role for him. Because we already talked about just a second ago, I don't think they're going to be running the ball unless it's late in the game, securing a lead, using the run for clock purposes. So what kind of role does Le'Veon have in this game if Darrell Williams and Clyde Edwards-Helaire are ahead of him?
Yeah, I don't know. What do you think, Rhys?
I don't think he has much of a role, except maybe as pass catching back. But you mentioned the Chiefs running the ball. Whenever they started to run the ball against the Buccaneers, you noticed their lead started to fall away a little bit.
Yep.
So by them, I don't see a problem throwing it almost every down, as long as you're not going into the wind.
Keep the foot on the throat and just ease it all the way in. Is that what you're saying, Rhys?
Yes. Why fix a broken clock?
Exactly.
Why fix a perfectly clean, good clock? Sorry.
Yeah. So, Rich, on this, I also think that Gronk on unders of catches is another one that people expect better numbers than he has been for Gronk. And Cameron Brate's been the receiver, right?
Yep. Yeah. Brate's out targeted him 17-7 in the postseason. Gronk has 2 or fewer catches in 5 straight games and in 9 of his past 11 games. Now, the tight ends were a huge part of the game plan when these teams met earlier in the season. Gronk had 7 targets. Brate had 6 targets. Gronk had a season high 106 receiving yards. But, you can't just, bet overs based on just what happened in week 12, or else, you'd be just jamming even these lofty Tyreek Hill overs based on that. I think one area where you can look at Gronk where I think is interesting, though, is his longest reception over. It's at 15.5 yards. He's had a 16+ yard catch in 63% of his games. And even though he hasn't been catching a lot of passes, he still has been catching them for significant yardage when he does. He has a catch of over 15.5 yards in 12 of 19 games this season and in 7 of his past 10 games. So if he is, going to catch one, I think, that's where you look at is playing the over on his if you're going to play a Gronk over, it would be the long reception as one of the more favorable bets on his docket, just because he has not been involved since that Chiefs game, in totality, just not really stacking receptions. He's doing a lot of blocking and doing some road grading like Gronk can, but they've been really involving Cameron Brate in the passing game a lot, especially this postseason.
Do you have a feel for Ronald Jones versus Fournette?
I do think we'll see Ronald Jones play more than he did in the NFC Championship game. There were some whispers that, the cold weather in his quad put some pause on it. Obviously, Fournette had the hot hand, also has to play a little bit of a role into, the gap that they had. But if they do try to run the football a little bit more than they did in week 12, because remember, they're down 17-0 from the final 3 quarters of the game. The Bucs were 32 pass plays to 9 run plays. I think that they would strive for a little more balance than that, as long as they're not chasing 17 points again. When healthy, Ronald Jones, they've kind of has always kind of fallen back on him in the run game. The thing is that if you're counting on any game script, I mean, it definitely favors Leonard Fournette because of his receiving role. He's run a pass route on 38% of the team dropbacks this season. Ronald Jones just 26%. So that's kind of like a more safety net for Fournette when the split is, that he's at least locked in that passing down role. I do think we'll see Ronald Jones play a little bit more, though, than he did against Green Bay. If you remember the first time these teams played too, Ronald Jones was kind of the spark plug. That team, they really weren't doing anything. He had a 37-yard touchdown on a reception that he broke. Then he had a long 40-yard run in that game. Over the course of the season, as good as Fournette has played in the postseason, I mean, by and large, Ronald Jones has been the more electric player than Leonard Fournette, for the course of the season. And I think they'll need some of that. So I think we will see a little bit more of Ronald Jones than we did against Green Bay.
Hopefully he doesn't fumble, and I was also
he's always one play.
Oh, I know. The other thing about Fournette is I would stay away from receptions, targets possibly for Fournette, but his hands haven't been that strong last few games. For a guy that caught a bunch of balls in 2019, he's dropped his share this postseason.
I mean, even the touchdown he caught against the Saints, he double caught that one.
Oh yeah,
that's kind of that's kind of what we were on against Leonard Fournette last year. The argument for him coming into this season before he got cut was everyone was citing how many catches he had with the Jaguars last year. But there's a difference between being capable of catching a pass and then adding functionality through the receiving game, and that was not what Leonard Fournette did last year with the Jaguars. He caught a bunch of dump offs, but wasn't adding a lot to the offense through the passing game. And that's kind of been the case still when he's gotten targets with the Bucs as well. So we'll see how much they involve the backs in the passing game, if they're chasing game script, as well. But definitely one of the odder developments I think of this season was, Leonard Fournette becoming like the safe passing down back for any team.
Yes. Because it seems like it's in his head right now. It's just one of those things.
So, I don't want to say it's the biggest storyline outside of the Super Bowl the past couple weeks, but it is one of the biggest is the Goff Stafford trade, the first blockbuster trade of 2021. Looking at it from, I guess, about a week back, week in hindsight, who do you think won the trade, Rich?
I mean, I would say just from like a team stance, I mean, the Rams are getting a quarterback upgrade, so I guess we can say default that they win the trade, but there's a lot of minutia here. I don't think it's as black and white as just saying, well, Stafford's an upgrade on Goff. I mean, because the Rams obviously put themselves in a spot now where they haven't made a first-round pick since 2016, which was Goff. They won't make another first-round pick since 2024, until 2024. And what that is their margin of error is just so small. Like, if they don't cash in over these next couple of years, they really have no way to funnel in the pipeline of talent. So they're all in over these next couple, seasons here. I applaud them from a sense for going for it, but also, you're in a bind. Like I said, your margin of error is really small. If you have an injury-plagued season, if Stafford just has any decline, there's a lot that can still go wrong, and you're not like you now have no pipeline to tangible assets via the draft, which is a tricky spot to be in. I like this trade from a couple angles because we can look at it from this Ram sense, and like Goff or Stafford himself, we can make a strong argument that he's had as much talent than what the Rams are offering in terms of pass catching, but he hasn't had a staff like this.
Right.
Coaching staff to work with. He really hasn't had a good coaching staff to work with in the totality of his career. So seeing what he can do with, some a proper scheme, paired with a good defense. He's not played with very many good defenses over his Detroit career by any means. And Stafford's guy can still be, a hyper efficient quarterback as well. We even seen a couple years ago when Jim Bob Cooter was there, them kind of take the air out of the football, and he was a low depth of target, kind of a more efficient target quarterback, and they could do something like that as well here. So I'm excited to see that. I mean, Goff, it's a tough spot for Goff because he's, second lifeline, but he's going to a spot that's in a clear rebuild. The only wide receiver under contract right now for the Lions is Quintez Cephas. So we have to see what he has to work with, coming into next year. Dan Campbell and Anthony Lynn is a significant coaching downgrade, I believe, as well. So we'll see what Goff can do in terms of is this just an audition? Is it a bridge? Are they in on him, kind of being the franchise quarterback still? There's a lot to be said based on seeing what the Lions put on the field with Goff, because their roster is so incomplete right now, or if it's just the rebuild kind of saps any, kind of upside, because Goff, I do believe, is a guy that needs the pieces around him to elevate him as well. So we'll see how it plays out as well. But I mean, listen, the season's not even over yet, and we're already having huge trades. So I mean, if that's an indication of what we're going to have, when the season ends, DeShaun Watson getting traded, any other pieces moving. Remember last year we had, Stephon Diggs got traded, DeAndre Hopkins got traded. There was a lot happening last offseason. So we could have another fun offseason again, if by all indications of what we've already seen with the two quarterbacks that were starting quarterbacks getting moved for each other, which almost never happens.
Especially within the conference. What are the odds? So if I'm Detroit, and you read more than I do, I assume, and the swirl that, hey, the Rams had a bunch of people calling about Goff. I wonder if Detroit could move him for another first-round pick in 2022 or whatever, and be able to even reap more rewards and just go into total rebuild, because Goff's not going to help them win more games. In fact, you probably don't even want him around if there's this, if it's circling the drain. Get something for him, start that rebuild in earnest. Any validity to that, Rich?
I mean, anything has potential to happen with the Lions. They're an open book right now. Obviously, I think the trade was great on their end. Obviously Stafford they were openly going to move him. So to get 2 picks and a starting quarterback for him, 2 first-round picks and a starting quarterback, no matter what you feel about Goff, I mean, I do believe that Goff is one of the 32 best quarterbacks in the NFL. So I believe he is starting caliber. So to get a starting caliber quarterback and 2 first-round picks, even with the Goff contract, which I believe is a little overblown, the ramifications of his contract, I don't believe are as negative as people have painted, especially the Lions definitely can take that on with no blip on the radar as well, to see what they do. If he gets flipped down the line, definitely potential. But I mean, I do like the trade a lot from the Lions perspective, being able to get a starting quarterback and 2 first-round picks as they approach this next era of trying to reconfigure what Matt Patricia left in crumbles here.
Oh yeah,
I do like the trade in just a sheer pick standpoint, but if you look up who the Lions have drafted with their first-round picks, the trade becomes a lot less exciting. You can't just get the picks; you have to make good decisions with the picks. So I'm not exactly entirely great with the trade if I was a Lions fan, especially with Stafford being a fan favorite. But potential is there.
It's kind of like the Raiders, right? They really didn't get that much for Cooper and Mack when we look at how that impacted their starting lineup. And, that's what you have to watch out for the Raiders. I mean, for the Lions, they have to do a better job than the Raiders. But I was thinking, like the Colts, Goff would be a decent, he's worth the first round pick for the Colts or something of that nature. The Colts have to fill that void. And so there are a few of those teams that could be in a play for Goff. That's just my thought. I mean, because otherwise they're left with Newton or Dalton or somebody like that, Tyrod Taylor, somebody like that. And I think that I prefer Goff of those choices.
Yeah, I mean the Colts are definitely one of those gray area teams where they've basically pushed in on being there outside of the quarterback. It's interesting is the Colts have built a decent core almost on accident around the quarterback position. But there's no way that was their plan, especially, obviously the Andrew Luck, situation changed so much for them. The preseason, last preseason, just altered so much of what their franchise was doing going forward. You pick up Brate to kind of bridge that. And then you have Rivers for a year. Maybe I assume if Rivers wanted to play again, they would have gladly had him back as well. So it's gonna be interesting to see what they do. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, a lot of the NFL could have a lot of quarterback turnover. There's not many safe quarterbacks right now. I think about half the league could have a new quarterback, heading into next season.
But one destination I would like Goff to go to just because of the receiver there is Washington. Because I would love to see Goff with a quarterback that can actually throw the ball and be a good quarterback. Make good decisions.
Having McLaurin.
Yes. I do not want to oust Alex Smith. That's all he's gone through. And hopefully he ends up somewhere like Indianapolis, who could use him.
So, Rich, you have been a Gardner Minshew fanboy, right? Is that fair?
No, I wouldn't say I'm a fanboy, but I mean, he's definitely a guy that I took a bunch of the, Superflex leagues at the end because I thought he just had the situation was going to offer a chance to start, and he did. It'll be interesting to see if anyone kicks the tires on him too, to just kind of bridge the gap. I think Minshew is basically one of those guys though that is a better backup, a guy that is better in spurts, playing 2 to 6 games instead of 16 for you. But it will be interesting because he's so cheap. He's got 2 years still on his rookie contract. Has shown he's at least capable for stretches of being a functional quarterback if anyone kicks the tires there. But I do think it's kind of shown that he is a better backup quarterback than a full-time starter. But listen, everyone needs guys this year. But we've got another really great rookie class again this year. 4 or 5 guys. You might see 6 guys, in the first round. Depending how you feel about Kyle Trask if he gets in the first round. I think we all believe Mac Jones is going to get in the first round now. He's not my flavor because he doesn't have mobility like the other top 4 guys do: Wilson, Fields, Lance, and Lawrence. I would prefer my quarterback a little mobility now, especially in today's NFL. But we could see 6 first-round quarterbacks this year.
That is crazy. And I'm sorry to push Minshew on you on like that, but Ryan Fitzpatrick could also be a starter. I mean, the Colts I could see them signing Fitzpatrick and drafting Mac Jones and calling that, or, something like that. We're in a new day in the NFL quarterbacks because all the old guys are starting to move out and we're trying to figure out, are the young guys as good as we hope they would be? And
now we're starting to see Derek Carr's name mentioned too as potentially be traded as well. He's another guy the Colts could easily take Derek Carr on, so we'll see what happens with that as well because his name's come up too.
Any chance Carson Wentz gets traded?
Yeah, I still think there's an absolute chance he does. I don't believe that the new coaching staff was completely sold on you have to fix Wentz. I think if they had a good enough offer and could come out of that contract, they would. Just depends on what the market is for him and what the staff feels about Jalen Hurts as well. Coinciding with that, where the organization is with Jalen Hurts, taking over. Because I still believe the Eagles believe they're operating from a stance of they're not rebuilding. That they still have a team that's good enough to absolutely win that division and still compete in the NFC. I definitely believe that's their internal dialogue.
Sort of like how the 49ers were a Super Bowl team a year before they were the Super Bowl team.
Yeah, we all have our own rationalizations in life, you know. I look at that mirror and it smiles back, and it really shouldn't at times. And you know, it's interesting with Stafford out in the NFC West. That's a great quarterback division. I mean, even Garoppolo being the fourth is decent. But you know, we mentioned the Colts, but the other team that's right there with the Colts that looks primed, and we're interested to see what they're going to do is a team like the Bears. You know, and I'm just interested to see how all this plays out because some of the veterans we saw, I mean, is New Orleans going to be able to keep Jameis? What's going to happen to Cam Newton and all that others? You know, I mean, there's so many dominoes.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a fun off season to say the least.
You mentioned fun off season. How do you see this Watson drama playing out? Do you think he's going to get traded? Do you think he's going to hold out? Do you think he's just going to suck it up and stay?
I mean, I would think that there's definitely enough, you know, smoke to the fire here, and we're in a different era now. I think that, you know, the NBA was you know, obviously a league that pushed this where the players, you know, got more power, and we're starting to see that happen in the NFL. So I mean, it might be irreparable. And to be honest with you, as crazy as it sounds, I think that trading Watson is really the only way that Houston can even start to rebuild. This team has no assets. They have no cornerstone players outside of DeShaun Watson. They have, you know, they have JJ Watt. That's really it. They have holes everywhere. They have a ton of bad contracts. They don't have any draft picks. Trading Watson, actually, if they are all in on this rebuild in this new regime, like keeping Watson and kicking the can, like you can definitely run into some, you know, probably, you know, he can get you to some 8-10 win seasons for sure. But how good can the Texans possibly make their team in the immediate future, even keeping Watson? They're probably not better than the Titans still in the short term, probably still not better than the Colts. As crazy as it sounds, trading Watson actually does kind of make a lot of sense for them if they can get the absolute haul that they should be able to get for DeShaun Watson. Obviously, the Jets stand out. I mean, if you're able to get those 2 first-round picks, another future first, maybe a guy like Quinnen Williams on a rookie deal, that's a great starting block to just try to rebuild this. I know your fan base is it's gonna be a nightmare for PR, but like if you're gonna have to move him anyways, I think it makes sense because you need a lot of picks. You need to, I mean, this is what in hindsight the DeAndre Hopkins trade is so bad, even compounded on this because you got nothing for the future for DeAndre Hopkins either. So I mean, trading Watson actually from an organizational stance, as crazy as it sounds, you know, it could be the kind of haul that they gets them going on the right track to building this thing back up. Especially if you can get it, because if you get the Jets pick, that is a quarterback at 2. And then you're talking about another, you know, the Seahawks first round pick that they got for Jamal Adams, another future one, and then potentially another player. You're kind of starting on the track of building this thing back up.
Do you take that hypothetical Jets trade, or do you take 2 or 3, the number 3 pick, the number teen or whatever pick from the Dolphins, a future pick, and then let's say Tua or someone else?
Yeah, I think it just depends on what you feel on your assessment of Tua versus the rookie quarterbacks coming out. I'm still pretty high on Tua. I feel like, you know, he played better than people obviously give him credit for, especially with the offensive line around him and just how many injuries the Dolphins playmakers had over that stretch of the season. And especially coming off of his injury. So, you know, I'm still pretty high on Tua. From a Dolphin stance, I still think I would obviously upgrade. If I had the chance to upgrade from Tua to Watson, I would do it. Absolutely. But it just depends on where you think you grade Tua versus, you know, a Fields, a Zach Wilson, you know, a Trey Lance, wherever you have those guys on your board. But, you know, you have to get a quarterback or a pick to take the next franchise quarterback involved with this trade with Watson. I think that's why, you know, a team like the Colts is a bad, you know, pairing partner, obviously in division as well. You never want to send him, you know, in a spot where you're going to, you know, have to face him multiple times per year for a rival, but you've got to be in position to get a franchise quarterback back immediately for him, whether it be via pick or getting Tua in a pick. And so I just think it depends on where you come out on Fields and those guys versus Tua. But I would be open to both, and especially if a team wants to throw in a player like the Jets could potentially be able to do. And the Jets would be fun too, or the Dolphins even, because, whoever trades for Watson at the top there, I mean, hopefully we can get Allen Robinson to go with DeShaun Watson, so we can free two birds with one stone.
Yes.
And have Allen Robinson finally play with a good quarterback for the first time in not only his NFL career, but going back to college as well, because he had Hackenberg in college. That we could see Allen Robinson finally play with some quality quarterback.
But you mentioned Tua, but I do think it would bring the Texans fan base a lot of hope for the future if you draft Tua, let's say his college teammate Devontae Smith. Just bring those two together, see if they can replicate what they did.
And they're going to be playing from behind. So how about Darnold? Does Darnold change teams this offseason, Rich?
Yeah, I think that he does. I mean, if the Jets don't make this push for Watson, or if it doesn't pan out, you're using that pick on a quarterback, which obviously I think then that pushes Darnold to be on the move. And Darnold's another one of these guys. A change of scenery could do him a lot of good. I think he has some bad habits, but there are plays on tape that you see Darnold when he is, that he's still, there's something there still. Obviously, the long run against the Broncos on Thursday night. I know that this touchdown didn't mean anything, but if you go back to week 2 or 3 when they played the 49ers, there's a touchdown he threw to Braxton Berrios on the run that, like, it's one of the best plays a quarterback has made this season. So there's something there. I think you get him just a new fresh start with an actual coaching staff. I mean, he would have been an interesting guy, I think, too, to go to the Rams and be with McVay. But get him with a good coaching staff and see what happens. There's still, I think, some light, some spark still potentially for him as well.
Oh yeah, if I'm the Steelers, I pursue Darnold, right? Because he'd be the perfect bridge after Ben. I mentioned Jameis earlier, and I see this talk now from Sean Payton. Hey, we love Jameis. We want him to, blah blah blah. When Brees missed time earlier in the season, Jameis was nowhere to be seen. Do you think that's talk, or do you think that's legitimate? I don't. I think if they really loved him like they say they loved him, it would have shown a little more.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, Jameis was awful the game he came in against the 49ers when Brees got knocked out of that game. And that really kind of didn't invoke a lot of confidence for him starting. And Taysom Hill was fine, definitely, from an analytics stance, he was above the threshold that you want from quarterbacks. Now, a lot of people don't realize that Taysom Hill is a lot older than you would think.
Yes.
He's going to be 31 years old. Obviously, he did his mission at BYU. He's an older prospect. He also had a few injuries at BYU and kept pushing back his, college eligibility. But he's a lot older quarterback, so it's easy for the Saints to say that, yeah, they don't want to go that route either because he's so much older. But they're up against the cap. What can they bring Jameis back for? Is Jameis willing to come back for kind of pittance to a degree when they didn't back him when Brees went down this year? I definitely want to see Jameis start. I mean, Jameis is like our heir apparent to Ryan Fitzpatrick, right? Like he has the Fitzpatrick gene where the roller coaster of the hair on fire, you don't know what you're going to get on a down to down basis, but he has the ability to kind of still be like a fun fantasy quarterback and make all the pieces around him, good for fantasy, which we always love. So even when you get the worst of Jameis, like Ryan Fitzpatrick, even when Fitzpatrick was at his worst, his guys are still elevated from a fantasy stance. And I think that's what we see Jameis in the next stage of his career is kind of maybe take the mantle from and be like the new Ryan Fitzpatrick.
I don't know if he can grow as good of a beard, though.
Definitely not.
He can eat some W's, though, right?
He will eat the W's.
Just no mention in frog legs in front of Rhys, all right, Rich?
No, I have to Google this now.
No, please don't. Please don't.
So as we wrap up here, what are some storylines that you're going to be watching this offseason?
That's a great question. Yeah, definitely like a lot of this, definitely the quarterback carousel that I believe that we're going to have, just seeing where those pieces fall. Definitely ready to start digging more into these prospects. I've slowly getting there. I don't have the capacity during the NFL season to fully invest into college football. I watch what I can and watch some of these players when I can, but now I'm really making up the ground now. So I'm really excited this next week when the Super Bowl is over to get more into prospecting, looking at this draft class. It's going to be a unique draft class in totality. And I'm looking forward to this draft because, we've got no combine. We've got some players that didn't play at all in college last year. We've got some guys that only played 4 to 6 games. Some guys played 10 games. It's going to be a real fun process draft. We're really going to see how teams approach the draft with more transparency than normal this year. Whether teams value analytics more, whether they value just raw testing numbers, whether they value just production numbers or the tape. We're going to really have some transparency on how teams approach the draft this year. And we'll be curious to see if we see people, teams trade more draft picks this year just because of the uncertainty. Maybe they move out of picks this year. Like some dynasty owners might do. We've seen that happen. So, definitely really looking forward to that whole next step in the process of this draft, which is unique in its own sense.
Oh yeah. You mentioned that. I was saying Trey Lance played 1 game and it was an average game. And then you have Mac Jones who, you've seen as much as you need to, no matter your opinion of Mac Jones, there's enough tape on him to come to that conclusion. Trey Lance, maybe not so much. Zach Wilson, maybe not so much. Fields, I almost get the feeling that people have seen so much of him that we don't appreciate how good he's been. And same with Trevor Lawrence. How about Jordan Love as a off-season topic? Is he going to stay in Green Bay? Are they going to extend Rodgers?
I definitely believe Rodgers will be back just because you're in the NFC Championship game back-to-back years with Matt LaFleur, his first 2 years. And, you can't get back there without Rodgers. Once you move on from Rodgers, you're starting over. And I don't think they're ready to do that yet. Jordan Love, by all accounts, he did not show anything, with the team by beat reporters. He wasn't even active for any game this season. By all accounts, he struggled in practice and an adjustment to the NFL. Surprise, surprise. I wasn't a Jordan Love a honk either in the draft and thought that draft pick, was one of the spit your water out moments during the draft. Definitely. But I don't really see Aaron Rodgers not being anywhere outside of Green Bay next year.
Yeah, I don't either. I think that's an interesting offseason topic though, because they either have to have a plan to move on past Rodgers after maybe another year and have Love as the heir apparent, or you extend Rodgers and then you have to figure out what to do with Love, right? You got to do something. You can't really just keep them both coming in perpetuity because you're going to waste that first round draft pick on a good contract, because that's the value of it, is that contract.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think that's what we're going to see play out. Is that just going down as just a really poor organizational decision, trading up to do it.
Oh yeah. It's not bad enough to be a bad decision, but let me pay juice on top of it.
Double down.
Oh yeah, double down.
Just like David Gettleman always does on his big man.
Oh yeah, good old Gettleman. Rich, it's been great having you on. Rhys, any closing thoughts?
Just keep doing the great work over at Sharp Football Stats.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. Definitely check that stuff out. All the stuff I did through the playoffs is free. Everything I'll be doing this entire offseason too. Post Super Bowl, obviously I'll start to get cooking on these dynasty rankings and these rookie rankings and stuff out there. All the stuff in the offseason will continue just to be no paywall at Sharp Football Analysis. So definitely check that stuff out, once we get moving into the 2021 gears.
Oh yeah. Hopefully you'll come back between now and the draft and be your 4th appearance on this, and we'll talk some rookie drafts.
Hopefully I beat someone, whoever's next in line. I beat to the 4th spot.
I want it to be you too. Just don't tell anybody. Have a great one, Rich.
I appreciate it, guys.